By the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not interested in helping him.
The night is still young. We'll see.
What's going on, you guys? We're continuing the Joe Rogan hate. Today, it's a clip from the Vanguard. I believe it's a clip from Joe Rogan as well. And it's a little bit of my commentary. And let's get into it.
The vaccine or whatever. And Joe's like, nah, didn't get a chance, didn't want to drag him down that rabbit hole. Nah, bro. Like,
did you feel pressure?
No, not pressure.
Pressure mean like make sure you covered everything you want to cover.
No. Just like I knew what was important.
Did you
not
prepare for
necessarily?
it?
Yeah.
Did you ask him why he was so pro-vaccine?
No, I didn't. But I also wanted to be rigid because there was a moment where he brought up the polio vaccine. I was like, oh, I don't want to correct him. That's a rough one. When you look at the actual, like, there's a bunch of them. Measles is another one, and you look at what actually happened.
Vaccine talk as a president.
Exactly. And I don't want to get involved in a podcast where there's a lot of shit I want to get to.
Yeah.
What? You just spent the last 4 years dragging your audience down this rabbit hole of deranged conspiratorial misinformation, ivermectin, convincing them this is the most important conspiracy, the most important psyop being inflicted upon the American public since who knows when. And then you have the guy on who was president during Operation Warp Speed, who was president during the lockdowns, and nah, bruh, nah, we didn't get into that shit. No, dude, I had him for 3 hours, and nah, man, I didn't even talk about that. Pathetic. Even the thing you claim to care about, which is total hokum, you weren't principled enough to ask a tough question about. You weren't principled enough to sit down and say, hey, let me nail your balls to the wall at least for 20 minutes about this thing that I've spent the last 4 years hyperventilating about. It's insane. It's so cucked.
The one thing I have to add before we play to this, because I thought that was superb analysis, Gavin, is that a lot of people are misanalyzing the reach that Joe Rogan has. And I thought you characterized it very well. This is not 2019 anymore, guys. It's not 2020 anymore. Joe Rogan is not nearly as relevant as he used to be. And it's crazy because the media doesn't understand relevance until it smacks them in the head over and over and over again, right? They didn't know when Joe Rogan was really at his hottest. When Joe Rogan was at his hottest, he was still kind of underground. He was...
And the Vanguard's completely right. The Joe Rogan literally had Trump on his podcast and has been talking about the vaccine nonstop. He's going to continue to, just peddle what he believes. And then he has the chance to talk to the President of the United States about his actual, his actual fight, like what he actually is passionate about, is it's clear as day. And he doesn't. So what's going on? Is it because he doesn't want to sway anything? Because he doesn't want to, get out of here, dude?
So impactful, and they hadn't figured it out at all. And it was when I was like an 18-year-old kid, okay? And that was when every single person I knew that was my age, that was a stoner, that was like mildly counterculture, everybody listened to at least the good episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast, at least the Joe Rogan clips that used to surface before he cracked down on that, and only official clips were on YouTube for a long time. He was so relevant. But here's what kind of political advantage even then you got from going on the Joe Rogan podcast, Gavin. You got Andrew Yang popularity. You got popularity that was thin. Oh, you've got name recognition. You've got some clout, but you have no base. You have nobody that's going to show up and vote for you. You've got tons of people discussing you online, but you've got no actionable group. You've got nobody that's going to knock doors for you in a way that's going to be meaningful, right? If you compare the Andrew Yang apparatus to even, the Elizabeth Warren apparatus, Elizabeth Warren was 10 times more serious of a candidate, maybe more, right? Because she had an actual ironclad base. She had an entire apparatus in Boston that was moving for her all across the country. Okay, you're not going to get there with Joe Rogan because, again, you're running into two problems. If you are going to vote, his base is going to go to Trump, and the reality is that most of his base isn't actually going to vote at all. It's like 5 million people that you don't ever consider calling to try and get their vote or to move the needle on them because they're so disenfranchised. They've got opinions. They want to run their mouth, but they didn't register, and it's probably too late to get them to register unless their state has same-day registration. You can't register today and go vote.
Yeah, let's take a look here. Before we get into the actual secular talk segment itself, let's take a look at some of the tweets that Kyle fired off while watching this interview. He was rage tweeting a little bit. And again, this isn't just like some random person. Kyle Kulinski has been on the Joe Rogan Experience at least 4 times. He's kind of the resident lefty, the token lefty, you know, to put it less charitably, if you will, on the Joe Rogan experience. And you know, Kyle's taken some criticism over the years for what some have considered him kind of laundering the reputation of Joe Rogan for the left, you know, saying, oh, he's a.
And if you have been keeping up with my past videos, you see that, you know, Kyle Kulinski is a very main character going against Joe Rogan. We have Sam Cedar calling out Joe Rogan, Emma Vigeland calling out Joe Rogan. Kyle Kulinski is a very huge advocate for exposing, you know, the fence straddler that is Joe Rogan. He's going to continue to say, oh, yeah, I'm not a Republican. He sounds like Dr. Phil at this point saying, oh, I'm not Republican, like you know.
A reasonable guy. He can be convinced. We can reach this person. And I've sympathized with that approach. I think that even if Joe Rogan himself can't be reached, his audience 100% can. His audience is full of incredibly malleable people. You put someone who can speak impressively and intelligently in front of those people, and they will be impressed. They will be swayed. They can be convinced. I thoroughly believe that. Either way, Kyle was accused for many years of kind of laundering Joe Rogan's reputation for the left, going too easy on him, kind of doing like access journalism or whatever. Like I said, I never really bought into that stuff. I always sympathized with Kyle Kulinski's approach, to be quite frank. How could you turn down access to such a large platform? How could you turn down having that ability to potentially influence that large of an audience? But Kyle clearly has at this point changed his approach. He's decided to throw some gasoline all over that bridge and a match right after it. The bridge is burnt. He's not going back on the Joe Rogan experience. I think that's, you know, clear to say.
Pour one out for our man Kyle on the JRV. It's going to be Tim Dillon only on election night.
Kyle says, I'm an hour and 12 minutes into the Rogan interview. I'm an hour and 12 minutes into the Rogan Trump interview, and it is by far the single worst interview of a major political candidate I've ever seen in my life. Embarrassing isn't a strong enough word. I'm in awe of how horribly stupid this is.
I love it.
And again, I feel like a lot of people have been making this point. I hate to make this point as well as someone who is in independent media, but there is not a single host on mainstream television on any of the channels, even Greg Gutfeld, even the Karens on The View. No one on mainstream television would have given Trump as softball an interview as Joe Rogan did. Literally not a single person on cable freaking news. So, like, isn't that horrific? Isn't that a horrific state of affairs, Zach, that here we are in this independent media landscape where we've gotten our way. Now independent media is king, and the presidential candidates are going on freaking Joe Rogan instead of the corporate news outlets, right?
The Vanguard's right. You know, is Joe Rogan, as far as being the one who is the platform that will appeal to the most people. It's a scary thing to have, you know, Joe Rogan in charge of that, a host of Fear Factor, a guy who likes to eat elk meat. And nothing wrong with this, but are we putting him in charge of the platform of who gets shown to the most people? It's a dangerous spot.
Isn't that great? We got our way. But instead, we're subjected to 3-hour suck-off fests where Joe Rogan just freaking, you know, plays patty cake with his rich buddy instead of like any semblance. I mean, give me freaking Don Lemon, give me freaking Megyn Kelly. I don't know. Give me anyone from back in. Remember in 2016 when Megyn Kelly at least asked Trump tough questions at the debate? Like, can we at least get something? Well, this is crazy. Let's take a look here because Kyle put out this tweet also, which I think is just totally damning. He didn't even need to add a caption. I think this speaks for itself in light of Joe Rogan's recent gift to the Trump campaign, or at least his attempted gift to the Trump campaign, which was that, sanitization of his image. Let's take a look.
By the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not interested in helping him.
The night is still young. We'll see.
If I have him on, the night is still young?
Yeah.
You think I'll have him on?
I think you'll have him on.
Really?
Also, I like the admission at the beginning of this clip, which is, again, from several years ago, when Joe Rogan says, I'm not interested in helping him. He knows Trump would not go on his platform if there would even be the semblance of it being a real journalistic exchange, in any way, actual pushback being applied. Joe Rogan here is admitting that basically the condition for doing an interview with Donald Trump is that it has to be a softball, that he has to go in there and he has to give him a BJ, and it has to basically be a glorified PR event, a PR media event. That's what this is. And Joe Rogan understood that a couple of years ago when he was talking about this. No, I'm not going to participate in that. No, I'm not interested in having you on here to launder your image and sanitize you. No, that's what it would be. Because you wouldn't actually let me do a real interview. You wouldn't actually let Trump come on here if I was intending to ask tough questions.
100%. And Lex reads him like a fucking book here, guys. Yep. Pay attention to exactly what Lex says. He says the night is still young, but he goes on. It's crazy.
Really? Why do you think that? Because you'll have Putin on?
And you're competitive as fuck. No. I think ultimately, I mean, you've had a lot of people that I think you may otherwise be skeptical. Would I have a good conversation? Which I think is your metric. You don't care about politics, so can I have a good conversation? And I think you had like people like Kanye.
And here we have Lex Fridman giving Joe Rogan an out. Sure, having a good conversation with somebody, that's great. You're not doing that. You're not doing that with the president of the United States, with a presidential candidate. He was not doing that whatsoever. Joe Rogan was literally giving nothing but like, hey, let's just dude out. Let's just, let me make you look cool. Let me, I don't want to step on your toes at all. There was no type of interesting combativeness. As you can see, even Joe Rogan responded a little bit combative to Lex Fridman. He did not do that whatsoever with Donald Trump. He was a whole different Joe Rogan.
For example, and you had a great conversation with him. I think
but Kanye is an artist. But Kanye doing well or not doing well doesn't change the course of our country.
Yeah, but do you really bear the responsibility of the course of our country based on a conversation?
I think you can revitalize and rehabilitate someone's image in a way that is pretty shocking.
And he's trying to do it. The problem is the Joe Rogan podcast is circling the drain too hard right now, that he's not going to be able to boost him back into relevance. And that's the only reason I think Joe is having him on. Lex Fridman hit the nail on the head. He said, you're too competitive. He's looking for a jolt to bring his podcast back into the mainstream discourse. What do you think, Gavin?
I agree that I think Joe.
So there we have it, you guys. We have the Vanguard giving their take, pointing out the hypocrisy with Joe Rogan. Even the little clip says that he would never have Donald Trump on. And it's clear as day that he did, and he sucked up to him, and now the dude's president. And now Joe Rogan is benefiting from it, and he will continue to have all these other billionaires on, such as Zuckerberg, such as, just anyone. He will literally have anyone who is a part of this money-making group. You will eventually see anyone who is a part of this club on Joe Rogan's podcast to parade their relatability to nobody. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. It's another day in the progressive way.